Okay, people, first of all, thank you so much to everybody that came today and wanted to participate in kind of hearing my journey, her journey, our journey together through me kind of discovering my sexuality as somebody that grew up in a Christian/Catholic household. So we're super thankful for you being here and taking the time to listen, get educated, ask some questions, find some community if that's what you're seeking in this. Yeah, it really means a lot to us. So
absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're getting started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before she gets into hers, I think she's going to tell her perspective of me coming out, and then I'm going to share mine. But before we get into that, I think it's really important to have a little bit of a backstory as to the environment I was in prior to this moment. So I grew up in a Catholic household, very devout Catholics. We went to church every single Sunday, and I went to private school, a private Catholic school for elementary school, and then I went to public middle school and high school, and then I went to a private Catholic college. And even in those public school years, the community that I grew up in my hometown was predominantly a white, conservative, Christian, heteronormative community. There was just hardly any diversity in general. We had, like, I don't know, across the whole high school, probably 5 people of color. There were 2 outwardly gay kids that I knew, and no alternate faith, really. There wasn't any openly Islamic children or Jewish children, and the kids that actually were even half Jewish got picked on, like, ruthlessly, and the kids that were openly gay were also picked on in the hallways. It was just like a very, as wonderful as the community was in so many other aspects, there was so many pitfalls to the lack of diversity there. And I don't think it was necessarily that the people that I was surrounded with were malicious in any way. It was just ignorance. He was just uninformed, just unaware of othering cultures and backgrounds and preferences and whatnot. And so I kind of grew up in that environment where people that were different were not celebrated. They were actually outcast very hard. So, and that wasn't just in the halls, that was at church as well. I would probably say once a month, I don't know, would you say probably once a month at church. And we kind of jumped around parish to parish, so it wasn't really anything against a particular parish. There would be a homily about homosexuality, and there were a few that really sunk in about homosexual people doing grave dangers to their relationship with Christ simply for being on the spectrum. And so just to have that background of I'm watching people getting picked on at school. I don't see very many of those people in general. And the church where I found my faith and I found my love for Jesus was also outwardly rejecting people like me. So that's the backstory. Now that you know that, now that you know that, she's going to share her perspective of the night that I came out.
Yes. Oh boy. So just a little background for me is, so as a mom, we have intuition, and we think we know kind of what's going on with our kids. And so I had picked up on some signs with Kahrin along the way that I felt like, there was maybe some interest in girls or whatever. My husband and I had talked about it a little bit, but at the time when, she did come out, it was definitely, she was friends with this girl that we're going to call Beth, because we don't want to get her name.
Call her Beth. Oh, Beth.
Oh, Beth. But, so I watched their interactions, and I could see, it's just like if your daughter is having a crush on a boy, you see the behavior, you see the facial expressions, you see the shyness and all that. So
I thought I was being very secretive.
Oh, no.
I was like, they have no idea.
No.
They have no idea. We are so good, Beth. We are so good at keeping this a secret. No, apparently they do.
Right. So we were like, oh gosh, I just wish that, she would just tell us because, I don't want her to feel like she has to keep a secret or to live a double life. And so we were trying to figure out the best way to do that. Now, mind you, I didn't read anything or get advice from someone who might know better. I just thought, oh, I can figure this out. I'm going to save the day. I'm going to be the hero. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to help my daughter. Well,
I'm going to unburden her.
Right? So we're watching Parenthood because that was like the golden calf of our family.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, if you don't know of the show Parenthood, this was a show in the mid-2000s that we watched as a family. It's really a remarkable show. I think it's still on Netflix, but yeah, the show is called Parenthood, and we watched it all the time.
So my husband and I and Kahrin were watching an episode because my boys were off of college. And wouldn't you know, thank you, Parenthood, there was an episode where the oldest daughter, her name was Hattie, she had gone off to college, and she came back home with a friend who was a girl. And I was like, ooh, I wonder where this is going to go. Because you didn't really see it coming. But sure enough, Hattie's friend was her girlfriend, and I think we said the brother.
Yeah, the brother walked in, and in the show, the brother has Asperger's, which is another wonderful, like, just inclusion and like, exposure of another, just another diverse human. It's just a whole nother chapter, a whole nother expression of life. So yeah, her younger brother who has Asperger's walks in on her and her girlfriend kissing. And didn't think anything of it, and then blurted it out in front of his parents, like, yeah, well, I mean, if Hattie can kiss her friend, whatever it was.
And they were like, what? Yeah. So, meanwhile, not to get into the whole bunch of stuff with the show, but the whole experience was the typical awkward, but very loving, very affirming, and everything. And so I was like, yes, this is it. So we paused the show. After the scene. The Bravermans. They're such great parents. Just see how awesome they were with her, and they were so accepting. And we just want you to know, Dad and I, you could tell us anything. Trying to be sly, and she's like, yeah. Well, I'm not going to give away her story, but so we had this conversation, and she ended up going upstairs, and you'll hear why in a minute. But when she went upstairs, my husband. Yes, yeah, nailed it. Thank you, Parenthood. She's going to tell us now. We won't have this, secret or whatever. And, well, she didn't. She came back down and crickets, nothing.
Naturally.
Show ends. And I still kept wanting to talk to her about it. I was gently trying to so how are things going? And, because she had this Beth, there was not it wasn't a great friendship. It was pretty toxic. And so I could see that there was turmoil that Kahrin was dealing with anyway. So I tried to talk around that. And finally, I think I just was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she ended up telling me, and, I'm like, it's okay or whatever. And then, but trust me, that was just the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So that's her perspective.
Yeah.
So
that's how I remember it anyway.
Right. That's how that's just her lens, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go back to the beginning, recreate the scene. We are all sitting, three of us, my parents on the couch, I'm in the easy chair, and we're watching this show, and I watch this scene. And as soon as this scene goes on, in her mind, she's like, yes, opportunity. In my mind, I'm like, no. Not now. Nope. And then they pause it. And as soon as they pause it, I'm really like, oh my God, no.
And so this is all internal.
In my head, yeah, no, my face was probably white as it goes, just like. And so I hear that, they pause the show.
Good intentions,
literally
good intentions.
Right after this scene. And they say their whole bit about how you can tell us anything.
Emphasize
anything, no matter what it is, pointing to the, and I'm just like, great, thanks guys, appreciate you for that. Didn't blink, just tried to be as stoic as possible. Oh yeah, if I ever have anything, I'll definitely come to you. And then of course I excuse myself because I'm like about to have cardiac arrest. And I go up to my bedroom and I text Beth and I'm like, they know. She's like, who's they? I'm like, my mom and dad, they know. She's like, what do you mean they know? I'm like, we're watching Parenthood, the scene came on, they paused the TV show, they said, you can tell us anything. Like, I'm like, Beth, they know. Like, they know. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And she's like, go back down there, watch the rest of the show, and don't say a thing. Just lie. Just lie your way through it, get your way back up to your room, go to bed, like, we'll talk about it tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, I got it. So I go back downstairs, we watch the rest of the TV show. And as the show is like winding down, I can feel the anxiety like creeping back in my chest because I'm like, crap.
Every parent wants to hear this, by the way.
I'm like, crap. And the only way I can get to my bedroom is by walking past my mother on the couch. So I have to talk to her. I have to at least say goodnight. I can't just like go up there. And like, I know at this point, she's like, really like wants to get it out of me. So I go to say goodnight, and next thing you know, she starts asking these questions, and she thinks that she's being so gentle, which in reality, she was being very gentle. It was very like, so how are things going? Like, what's going on? What's going on with you and Beth? And she thinks that that's how it's coming across. It's like, what's going on with you and Beth? But in my mind, I'm like, I'm hearing, what's going on with you and Beth? Oh, I'm like panicking, I'm sweating. I'm like, nothing. Like, what do you mean? Like, nothing's going on with me and her. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, I mean, but like, really,
like, for real.
Like, really, what's going on with you and Beth? And I would not, I think she had to ask me like 4 or 5 times before I finally was like, you know, I just started bawling, crying, I'm apologizing. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I don't know why, like, I didn't mean to, like, I don't know how it happened, it's just happening, and like, are you disappointed in me? And, you know, she was just like super loving. And, you know, she said the iconic line, which we will dive into later. She said the iconic line of, honey, I love you anyway. Your father and I love you no matter what. Which in theory sounds really great. But like I said, we will dive into that a little bit later. So that is the nice little story of me being gently dragged into coming out, which leads right into our first lesson of this story, which is, I don't know if this is backwards to you. It might not be backwards to you, but it says lesson 1, let your kids come out when they are ready. Not when you want them to be ready, but when they are ready.
Yes, absolutely. Because honestly, I mean, if I'm honest, I wasn't ready either, because I was forcing the issue and I had a ton of work I had to do. I had all these beliefs and constructs that I had to work through, and so well-intentioned to want to, you know, like I said, let's be the hero and lift the burden off my daughter. But, you know, I didn't know what was best. I didn't have any guidance. I just was shooting from the hip and, you know, trying to, like, this is what we do as mom. We do the best we can with what we know. And I knew very little. So,
yeah, and I clearly wasn't ready to come out. I mean, I was getting blackmailed at school. I was hearing, somehow somebody found out and was like texting me off an app saying like, I know your dirty little secret. I'm going to tell the whole school. So like, I already have.
And I didn't know any of that.
Of course, I'm not going to tell them that. So I'm like dealing with all of that. I'm dealing with the church. I'm dealing with watching kids getting picked on. Like, I'm just like, no, I'm not ready for this at all. And that made it really challenging for us because, of course, because my parents were so loving and caring, they had lots of questions. And they frequently liked having deep discussions about, what does this mean? I'm like, I don't know. I'm 15. I don't know anything right now. I've had one boyfriend at this point. Like, I have no idea, like, how to navigate relationships in general, let alone how to navigate a same-sex relationship in a community that has 0 LGBTQ exposure. So all across the board, not ready. I wasn't ready, not good to be dragged into that situation. She wasn't ready, or she would have approached the rest of our journey together very differently, which we're going to get into as well. So yeah.
So sorry.
Oh, it's fine. Lesson number 1.
We've had the apologies.
Yeah,
100
no,
times.
we're there. I keep telling him, like, Shelby, we are past that point.
Yeah.
We've made it to the other side.
Yeah.
So yeah, lesson number 1, let your kids come out when you're ready. And kids, if you are on the LGBTQ spectrum and you have not come out yet, it is on your terms. It is on your time. Nobody should be pressuring you into any of that. And if somebody is pressuring you or guilting you into coming out for whatever the reason is, it doesn't serve you. Do away with those ideas and follow your intuition. You'll know when it's time to come out. You'll know.
Yep.
So lesson number 2, which would have helped in lesson number 1 in coming out when you're ready, is create the space where diversity is normalized, which, as I alluded to in sharing my background of my community, that was not the case. Not in our community was there diversity, and in our own individual home, you can speak to that.
Yeah, we just didn't have conversations. We just, not that we made a point to say we're not going to talk about the LGBTQ community. We just didn't talk about it, as if it wasn't there. And that sounds really cold and callous, but at the time, it was not on my radar. It wasn't something I was really thinking about. And we just didn't live in a community that had a lot of diversity in it. And so we were just talking about this earlier tonight. I really have to commend a family that we're friends with in our community who have 4 children. One of them is adopted from China. And all these years, they have taken their children and they've driven 45 minutes down to a church in the city that's an Episcopalian church that is uber affirming, all inclusive. They had a lesbian priest, and they wanted to expose their kids to all these different walks of life. People on the margins, people who look different, people who have, different ideologies and whatever. They just wanted that exposure. And at the time, I'm like, that's really cool, but didn't think any more of it. And now I'm like, wow, that was like incredible that they did that for their children. They served their kids that way. And so, if I had a do-over, would definitely do more of that, because we have to have these conversations with our kids. I mean, it's like, let's talk about humanity, people, and not it be some kind of a separate, like, it's not even to say like, well, we need to expose you to all these different things, like it's an issue that we need to be. It's just like, these are people. This is God's beautiful, colorful, unique, and vibrant world. Let's immerse and learn as much as we can about every culture, about different religions, and we're doing that now in our world, but would have served us all very well back then.
Yeah, and I think as far as like, how do you do that? What does that look like? Especially if you're not somebody that has like your own family. I know a lot of people that are watching this are peers of mine. So I think the first step in getting to that place of creating a space for other people, whether that's your friends, your kids, whatever, to celebrate diversity is to become aware of diversity itself, which means you've got to stop for a moment, pause, and look around you and see, who am I surrounded by? And pay attention. Is this school predominantly white? Is it predominantly Catholic? Is it predominantly straight? If it is, what are the other aspects of life that I have not gotten in touch with yet, that I haven't learned yet? And that's not just, like I said, it's for things other than just sexuality. It's really just expanding your mind and your worldview on what else is out there, because I promise you there is a lot more out there than whatever your niche has been growing up or in college or whatever. So, and from a kid's perspective of not having an environment that was diverse and normalized, it's very challenging. So to have an environment in which everyone is celebrated and diversity is normalized, that would have made my coming out process, and I'm sure so many other people's coming out process, far, far, far different. It wouldn't have felt like such a big deal. It would have felt like it's like, I don't know how many coming out parties you see for people proclaiming that they're straight. I mean, I haven't seen one. I don't think that's a thing. And that's just because of the lack of exposure and the lack of normalization of it. The minute we get to a place where nobody feels like they have to come out to the world, we've arrived. Because at this point, it's just life. It's no different than if I were to be dating a man. It would be the same. It would be the same excitement, the same celebration. So yeah, I think the first key to that is just becoming aware of your surroundings.
Well, and before we do that next one, just the reason she titled this Coming Out and Coming In.
Oh yeah.
Is because I had read a comment on another post where a mother-daughter had shared their story. And this woman said that her niece, I believe it was, didn't have a coming out party. She had a coming in party. She said, I know where all of you stand. I've been in your world. But if you would like to come in and be a part of mine, I'd love to share how I feel and what my experience is and what my struggles are and what I'm dealing with and what I'm excited about. Like, so beautiful to then take that burden off the person who, Kahrin's, you know, for her to just live her life and not feel like she's got to do this big dramatic thing to feel accepted. Yeah, that needs to end. Yeah.
I still haven't done that. I'm pretty sure everybody knows in my life, but I still have not, like, I've never once had a big post on Facebook to let the world know that this is me. This is me.
Yeah.
If you're a part of my life, great. You figure that out pretty darn quick. If you're not, then you don't know. And that's great. I shouldn't have to feel like people that I don't know and who don't know me need to, like, experience that expression of mine. And if some people choose to do that, that's great, you know, whatever you want to do. But I feel like there's a lot of pressure around that topic. So yeah, which comes to lesson number 3, which is, you can read this one.
Your child's sexuality journey is about them, not you. Yeah. Yeah. You want me to start, or you want to go? Yeah, so major waking up moment for me with this, because twofold. From the religious aspect, and let me premise this by saying, we're not here to change anyone's beliefs or tell you what's right or wrong. That's an inside job. It's a personal discernment. But what we are here to share is what we think is most important, and that is that we need to love people, period. We just need to love people for who they are. I don't care if that's gay or straight, you know, people of color, white people, people are Muslim or Christian. Like, we just need to love people because we're all God's children. You said that earlier.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll say it about the family. I mean, it's one family.
Well, we can get to that. Yeah, I'll share that.
So from a religious standpoint, this is just my personal experience and our experience as a Catholic family, is that, well, first of all, I didn't really know anything except what the church had told me. I didn't grow up in a deeply spiritual environment where God and everything was a part of my life on the regular. I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have any opinions about this lifestyle. I didn't get exposed. But when I became Catholic and faith became an integral part of my life, that's when I started hearing the teachings about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's wrong, because that's what the scripture says, and this is what the priest says, and this is what the society thinks. And so I hadn't even checked my own beliefs. Like, why do I believe that? Because someone told me to believe that, or because I believe that to be true 100% in here? So when I started to dig into at least the Catholic teaching on it, they say right in the documentation that it's generally accepted that this is inherently a part of who that person is.
Meaning they didn't choose it, they were born that way.
And it's not a sin to be
on the LGBTQ spectrum.
Attracted to the same sex, because morality presumes choice. And if you don't have a choice before you're born, then, okay, so again, I'm just telling you what the Catholic doctrine says. But it's the acting on, the engaging in the intimate behavior that is considered the sin. And so that's what scared me, right? Because I felt deeply that I was responsible for my daughter's salvation, like me, Shelby, is responsible for my daughter's salvation. So she has to like be chaste because like God's not going to be happy about that. Even though I had told her, you are not going to hell. God loves you for who you are. You are a beautiful child of God or whatever. But that's kind of a mixed message if I say, but I think you need to be chaste because, and like looking back, because it took me a while to actually let that sink in. Like, what am I saying? Like, you need to never act on this half of who you are, this expression of your love. You need to repress that the rest of your life.
Could you imagine?
Live with the woman and love her, but just never be intimate. Like,
there's different levels for that too. Like there are some Christian faiths that think that being on the LGBTQ spectrum in general is a sin. There are some people that think that it's not that inherently is not a sin, but any type of physical interaction with your partner, all the way down to holding hands, is a sin. And then there is like, the other side where no, that's fine. It's just you can't be sexually involved with the same sex. That's where you draw the line. And so, I mean, I knew that she was struggling with this. And I was struggling myself. It wasn't just her. I was struggling myself with this. Trying to navigate, because when you're with someone that you love, that is a natural feeling to want to share in that type of intimacy and that love with them. And so I'm wrestling in my own mind, because not only am I still experiencing at this point Mass and these homilies, my mom at the same time, unfortunately, this is where she gets sad. My mom was sending me a lot of articles at this point about how people can change and about how people have found a way to be chaste their whole lives. And I was just getting inundated with these in my inbox, and I just wasn't reading any of them. It's okay. Yeah. She did the best she could, and then she knew better, and then she did better.
Yes.
So it's fine. But this is really where our relationship suffered the most, because I genuinely felt that my mom was disgusted by my intimate nature with someone that I loved very deeply, and that was very hard for me. And it was never that she was disgusted in me. It was that she was so afraid for me. She was so afraid that me going down this path would send me somewhere where Jesus wasn't going to be. And she knew how much I loved Jesus, and that the only thing that I truly wanted in life was to be with him at the end of the day. And she felt that it was her responsibility to make sure that that happened at all costs. And unfortunately, that led to her sending these articles and me feeling even more confused and more upset and more, XYZ. So that was really where we struggled the most, is having those deep dive dialogues about intimacy. And it kind of got to the point where Beth and I had separated at this point. We separated pretty much immediately once they found out, because it was just too hard. But then when I had my second girlfriend in college, which was a far more healthy, it was probably my first genuine relationship with a woman, I didn't tell my mom right away. I waited, it was like 2 weeks. But I didn't tell her right away because I was afraid. I didn't want those dialogues to come up again. I didn't want to have to be sent those articles again. And I had no idea that this entire time it was probably about 10 months between. That entire time, while I was thinking my mom was disgusted with me, what she was actually doing was researching and diving in deeply into this community and trying to understand and hearing testimonies and all that kind of stuff.
And totally didn't about this. And didn't tell you.
Oh, and didn't tell me. Yeah, that was the great part about it, is when I finally told her about my new relationship, I was so like, hey, I'm dating another girl.
And I was like, yay.
She was like, great. When can I meet her? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know, I was so confused. But that's because she was doing all this research on her own, and I didn't know about it. So
and that's another, like, don't do it by yourself. Like, keep your kid involved with that. Let them know the journey that you're on, so they understand. Or do we have one more point in that?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because it's important.
Make it. Yeah.
Make it.
Definitely make it.
So anyways.
I don't know what she's going to say.
Well, I said it was twofold, like the religious part. And again, that's just our experience. That's the truth that I came to understand myself. But the idea that we as parents, as moms, we have these beautiful dreams for our children, and we have these expectations for how we think their life should unfold. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we want them to, you know, be healthy and happy and have someone to love them and take care of them and serve them. And we want them to grow and become self-actualized and be better people than we are. All of these things. But what really, really, really smacked me in the face was how much I actually believed that all that storytelling that I had done about what her life was going to look like, I thought was real. And so when the idea that she would not have a man that could be like as amazing as my husband, potentially amazing.
That's a whole nother thing, is because I wasn't even like I was very split. I'm very much split down the middle, very much bisexual. But the mere thought that I could potentially not end up with a man,
I mean, it was devastating to me. And then I'm like, okay, but these are my dreams. These are not hers. And who's to say that she can't have a beautiful life? It's just not the life that I thought it was going to be. And the one time that I did break down in front of her is I told her I tried so hard never to cry in front of her.
But then she did.
Babies and all.
Other than the articles, that was really hard. That was the hardest moment, because I mean, for me, the number one thing that I fear more than anything else is disappointing other people. That's like my biggest bugaboo.
Oh, she thought she disappointed.
Yeah, I was like, shoot, I didn't. I'm not following down the path that my mom wanted me to. I must be a big failure as a daughter. That's how I felt.
Yeah, and I understand why she felt that way. Which, of course, no parent wants that. They don't want their child to feel that they're so disappointed in their feeling. But unfortunately, because I hadn't thought it through, like, it was a gift. That was an incredible gift that she gave me in this experience, to just step back. And it's not just about their sexuality journey. It's about all of their path. Like, it's their life. They have their own spirit. God put gifts and talents inside of our children, and they know what those are. They will find their way. It's not up to us to tell them what we think is best, or what path is the right path, or you should go this direction and you should get this job or that. That's just not healthy. It's just not healthy. They've got to trust in themselves, because then we're taking away their ability to discern their own path. And if I say to Kahrin, I don't really, I don't say it like this, but God, is in all of us, and we can hear the whispers, and the Holy Spirit is guiding. But I think my voice is more important. Like, you should listen to mine. I don't trust you to hear God speak in your world. I need you to trust me. And by the way, God, you're busy with 7.5 billion other people. I manage, Kahrin. It's fine. I mean, literally, how ridiculous was it?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I think, like, that's, to flip this on its head, I know the lesson 3 was your kid's journey, but to the kids that identify with what this feels like, you have got to tune out everything else, everyone and everything, and sit in at least this is my truth. This is what worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for you, but my advice based on my personal life journey and experience is I found clarity when I shut up, and I shut everyone else up. Not because I told them to shut up, but because I went in. I went in my own silence and my own stillness. I spent time alone. I spent time in nature. And I observed how this concept of being with a woman made me feel. Not in here, because in here, even to this day, I still struggle sometimes. because there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise on all fronts, and it can be very overwhelming, especially if you don't have the community around you that's telling you, dude, this is super normal. So that's my advice to you, is to really, if you believe something, question why you believe it, and go inside of it and really draw your conclusions from your intuition and from your soul, not from your brain.
Well, and to just add one more thing to that is that Kahrin, I just want to praise her on here, because her love for Jesus would make most of us weep, like truly. And she maintained through it all, through this, and I'm telling you, she struggled mightily.
I really did.
This really. And because of our close relationship, I was yoked to her. Mm-hmm. And although I'm clearly not going to experience exactly her feelings, but when she was up here, I was up here. When she was down here, I was down here. And at one point she was even asking me to pray for her, for the man to come into her life. And I'm thinking, you're asking me to pray for something that 100% I can see. It's just not like
I was praying every night for God to change me for years, right? Because
So I can just say from real life experience, it's one thing to read about this kind of lifestyle and think you understand it, but when you are, this is my kid and I'm watching her, she was not doing well. She was, and I don't want to, you can share your own story with that, but it was hard, and the journey is extremely painful and difficult enough without, she's talking about the noise. That's exactly what I had to do. I had to get completely inside and it's just me and Jesus. That's it. I don't want to hear from anybody else. I can't. I have to hear from him. Mm-hmm. And that is where I found my peace. That is where I got my answers. That is where things made sense. That's where I realized the container of faith that our family all lived in didn't hold this situation. It didn't work. It just broke wide open. Like, this isn't going to work. What I'm seeing when my kid is not, doesn't match up with what I'm being told outside of the situation. And this girl, the love she has for Jesus, she is such a light in the world, and she is full of so much love, and she gives it away, gives it away, gives it away. I've watched this girl minister to people. I've watched her share the gospel, spread the gospel. Like, that is some good fruit. And I wanted to say good ass fruit, because it is. And that's good fruit doesn't come from a bad tree. So I just have to look at what's real for me. And it's goodness.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love you. What's really interesting as well, before we move on to our last lesson, is that my mom's beliefs didn't shift until it was her kid. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it shifted was literally only because I was her kid. Mm-hmm. And I think this is where I'm challenging. This is the problem. I challenge you. I challenge everyone around you to start looking at other people as if they're your own kin, because we are. It doesn't matter if we come from a different bloodline, a different country, a different background, a different religion, whatever it is. When you go in and you listen to your intuition, you start realizing that every single thing, humans, plants, animals alike, we all come from the same divine source. We just have different shells. That's it. When you realize that, it is impossible not to absolutely love everyone and everything around you. So it shouldn't take hitting home for you to wake up. Start waking up right now, because we're all a big family. Everybody, we're all a big family.
And thankfully I did, because a lot of times it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That kids come out to their parents, and the parents.
They get rejected by their family. They get rejected by the church. They get rejected by their friends. Where are those kids supposed to go?
Right.
And the only answer to that question is 6 feet underground. And if I didn't have my mom, if I didn't have my dad, if I didn't have my genuine love for Jesus, and I'm super thankful for my Catholic upbringing because it gave me that opportunity to find Jesus. If it weren't for those 3 things, I, without a doubt, 100% would not be here today. And that's kind of what she was alluding to with it being a very, so I'm very thankful. I'm very, very thankful to have had this blessing, but this shouldn't be a blessing. This should be the norm.
Right.
She should be the norm. My dad should be the norm. And everything else outside of that, in my opinion, based on what I've lived through and what I've watched other people live through, anything outside of that is simply disservicing and discrediting the human experience. So,
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, last lesson. I don't know if these are still backwards.
No, I don't think they are.
Maybe they're not. Lesson number 4, immerse yourself in the LGBTQ journey and lifestyle. It doesn't matter to me if you identify as on the LGBTQ spectrum or not. It's something, it's a facet of life that is important, that should be addressed, that should be looked at, should be questioned about, and don't be afraid. If you are not on the LGBTQ spectrum, but you're uncomfortable talking about it or asking questions about it, the first thing to do is ask, why am I uncomfortable? The second thing to do is find somebody that you can trust, that you know either is well-versed on the topic or is on the spectrum themselves, and pick their brain. Because I can tell you from my experience, now that I'm okay and I'm healthy and I'm fully accepting of myself, nothing brings me more joy than my friends and my family asking me genuine questions about my sexuality. I'm not afraid of it. And I would probably bet that many people wish that their friends created that space for them to feel like they could talk about what they've gone through. Because other than
get curious, you know?
Yes. Other than, I mean, I have only very recently have I made friends on the LGBTQ spectrum. I have been out of the closet. Isn't that funny too, to be living in a closet? I have been out of the closet for 8 years, and I have not had a gay friend until the last 2 months. Like, genuinely a friend that I'm close to, that I can trust, that has shared a similar journey to me.
That's a hard one.
So I've been walking this journey alone. Yeah. From the peer perspective, I've had her, but she can't understand.
It's not the same.
You know what I mean? So, and I can't even begin to tell you how much love and how much light I have been filled to the brim with just from these few friends that I have made recently. I mean, it's indescribable. So if you are on the spectrum, find your people. If you're not comfortable joining an LGBTQ group, I was one of those people. I never joined those groups in college. Just put yourself, explore different neighborhoods around wherever you're living and try to find areas that it's more normalized. Maybe go out, try going to a different bar. Yeah. Tonight go to a gay bar, go to a karaoke bar that's predominantly gay people, just to be around it, just to immerse yourself in it. Right. That's my advice for kids that are on this journey.
Yeah, and for me, that's what I did. I just go head first. I wanted to understand. I just read everything that I could. I tried to, I read all the scriptures. I looked at the historical context. I tried to make sense. I learned a lot. Let's just say it was eye-opening, because this is how much I knew about homosexuality before my daughter. And, I know this much now because I took the time. It's work. You've got to put work in. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to do it. And so there's resources everywhere. But one thing I did not do that I wish I would have is I needed to also find someone who was a parent that had a gay child who was a Christian, that could understand me. I read about a lot of moms who were struggling, but I needed a friend, and I didn't have that, and it was hard. It was very hard. But again, that's why we're sharing our journey and what we learned.
Yeah. Alrighty, cool.
Q&A?
Q&A. Yeah, we've reached that
Is there
point.
anything on here?
We've reached that point. Yeah, we do have a couple questions that came through the chat, which is awesome. The first question that we got through this chat is, if you could have come out on your own terms, what do you think that would have looked like? How would you have wanted that to happen? It's a great question. Thank you for asking. I would say that I probably would have wanted to feel a little bit more, honestly, I probably wouldn't have come out until college, because high school was far too traumatic in general. I had gone through a shooting at my high school. My basketball coach that I loved more than anything got cancer and committed suicide. And, you know, there was just a lot going on for me in high school, and that all contributed.
That all happened at the same time?
Yeah, it all happened at the same time as I was discovering my sexuality. So I think it would have been definitely better for me to, one, be a little bit more emotionally mature to dialogue, because I was a brat. I didn't want to talk about it because I was confused and I was scared. So I think had I had a little bit more grace, our relationship wouldn't have suffered. It didn't really suffer all that bad, but it wouldn't have suffered even in the ways that it did had I been a little bit older and had a little bit more time to sit with it and kind of be on my own and discover that, because up until that point, I had nowhere to run. You know, I was living under my parents' house. Yeah, I think that's probably what I would have wanted to do. Another question we have is,
how do I handle it when my child seems to be jumping back and forth between same-sex and heterosexual?
You want to answer that?
No, you answer.
Oh, I'll answer. Oh, well, you just handle it, because it's no different. If your child is a female and she's dating a male, there's no discussion about it. If she then dates another male, you're like, well, are you sure you're going to date another male? Like, you're not going to do that. So if your child seems to be going back and forth between genders, that's just them trying to figure it out. And that's the same for any.
Forever.
Yeah, that might be their whole life might be like that. They might have, I mean, that's me, you know, like I go back and forth all the time. It's really just, for me, it's about the person. So I think normalizing that behavior as well, and understanding that your kid is just trying to navigate relationships in general.
Hard enough, yeah.
Yeah, because at that, you know, in this age, this early, you know, adolescence to young adulthood, we're all just in and out of relationships, trying to figure out what we like, what we don't like, what we want, what we don't want. And the gender should have nothing to do with it. So if you do see your kid going back and forth in that way, just continue encouraging them that, like, it's all good. Like, keep figuring it out. I hope you find the right person, because it's about the person, it's not about the gender. So thank you for that question too, by the way.
Why is it wrong to say I love you no matter what, or I love you anyway?
Yeah, this one I feel is really relevant to people that are not on the LGBTQ spectrum, which I know there are a few of you on here. That is damaging to hear for me, and it's damaging to hear for other people as well. Just from me talking with other kids on the LGBTQ spectrum, it's damaging because the language in there is, I will love you no matter what, or I love you anyway. Anyway is really hard, because it's like as if there's something not to love. Like, oh, I am willing to love you beyond the fact that you're
disappointing me in this.
Yeah, or whatever it is.
Despite.
Where it's just, no, I love you, dude.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's great. You know, when you use that language, it reinforces the stigma against being on the LGBTQ spectrum, because it makes you realize that, oh, I have to be loved anyway. You know, as if I'm just not loved already.
It sounds really pretty and in theory, but it's, and I wouldn't have known. Until you, again, we don't know until we hear stories. We've got to hear stories. We've got to meet people and be a part of their experience and let them share, because otherwise it's just, it's the story we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
And the story we tell ourselves is not always the accurate one, you know, so. Yeah. My parents keep telling me how hard this is for them. How do I handle that?
you want to speak to that from the parent perspective?
Well, I know that was a really other big thing that I dropped the ball on, because I was explaining to her that I didn't have anyone to talk to. It was really difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
And why am I burdening my child with my fears and my insecurities and that is just like no place to be dumping my pain or grief or confusion or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I was already full to bursting with pain. Couldn't handle that. Couldn't handle that.
Again, doing the best you can with what you know.
Yeah.
But that's for you to work on and come to terms with. Love, 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 no matter what. That's it. That's it.
Because you know, I love my mom, and I don't know, you know, I don't know what the dynamic is if you are on the spectrum and what your relationship is with your parents, but like my mom and I are best friends. And so when my mom comes to me and says that she's hurting and she feels alone and she's struggling and she needs a friend,
please,
I'm like,
go get one.
Okay, no. I'm like, okay, sis, like, what can I do here? And unfortunately, that kind of put me in a position where I had to share my colors before I was ready, and in an environment that just ended up not being very safe for me. And that was really hard for both of us. And I think the moral of that story is, parents, if you're struggling, you've got to find your own outlet, because we can't handle it. We just can't handle it. We would love to handle it for you, because we feel responsible. I mean, we are like, the problem is we feel responsible for your anguish, and we're already in anguish. So, you know, it's just very overwhelming. It's very overwhelming for us.
Which is quite ironic, since the whole thing started with me. Let me lift this burden from you, so you don't have to live a secret. And now let me dump my burden on right back on you.
Yeah.
Live and learn, live and learn.
Yeah.
So thank you all. That's the last question.
That's all we got. If anybody has any other questions before we jump off that you would like to have
send them after the fact.
Yeah, or if you don't feel comfortable sending them now, feel free to send them after the fact, and we will type our responses out in our follow-up email. So
thank you.
Cool.
Thank you all.
All right, people. Thank you to everybody that was on here. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, sharing your heart, sharing your ears.
Giving us
really, we really hope that you keep expanding, keep growing, keep deepening, and keep loving everyone around you.
Yep.
Because everyone needs it.
Yep.
So, all right, guys.
God bless.
Thank you.